1. Cyrus is sitting in a circle with his peers. Without warning, Cyrus reaches out and pulls Jane's hair. Cyrus's RBT takes Cyrus to another room for 10 minutes. What type of procedure is this? What does the question want to know? They want to know about the procedure. So what procedure exactly is that? It's the RBT taking Cyrus to another room for 10 minutes in response to Cyrus pulling Jane's hair. So what has the RBT done? Well, 1, they've removed Cyrus from the room altogether. And 2, they did it for a certain amount of time. So this looks like a timeout. In an ABA, right, we have different types of timeout. We have exclusion timeout, non-exclusion timeout, timeout ribbon, and a couple others, right? So what kind of timeout are we using here? So we can obviously eliminate extinction. This is not extinction because she's removed Cyrus, okay, in response to one of his behaviors. We're not putting this behavior on extinction. We are reacting to it and putting Cyrus in timeout. So we need to ask ourselves, was Cyrus excluded or was he not excluded? Well, he was excluded from the activity, right? They took him to another room for 10 minutes. Therefore, it's going to be an exclusion timeout. A non-exclusion timeout is the same idea, except you're not excluded from the environment, right? You're just taken out of the activity or whatever you were engaged in when the maladaptive behavior happened. And then timeout ribbon is the actual use of some sort of marker, some sort of ribbon to signal someone is in timeout for a certain period of time. In this case, however, Cyrus was taken out of the room. He was excluded. He was put in timeout. So what type of procedure did the RBT use? They used an A, exclusion timeout. Which of the following should you do as a behavior analyst before intervening in a child's aggression behavior at school? All right. We are a behavior analyst, and we want to intervene in a child's aggression behavior. Now, the at school piece is very important to this question. Okay, all the information here is important. What do we need to do? And they want to know before we start this intervention. So we know we're going to be intervening at school for aggression. What do we need to do before we start? A, inform the school staff that the client may experience an extinction burst after intervention starts. Now, this is a very common answer to pick, but you need to be careful. Did we talk about extinction at all in the question? No, we're just talking about intervening. We're not saying how we're going to intervene. So telling the school staff that an extinction burst might occur just isn't going to be accurate based on the information given. And remember, you're answering questions based on the information given, not what you would do, if you were going to tackle aggressive behavior. We're looking at what the question is telling us. All the question says is we're going to intervene, not how. So A, we're adding stuff that just isn't there. It's incorrect. B, warn the family at home that the client's aggression may increase in the home. What would this look like? Well, this would resemble behavior contrast, right? If we're going to target aggression at school for reduction, what does behavior contrast say? Well, in other environments, aggression may start to increase. If we are successful at decreasing it in school, all things else held constant, aggression may increase in home. So yes, we definitely want to tell the family, hey, we're going to work on aggression in the school environment. Just be aware that aggression may temporarily increase in the home. B looks pretty good. Can we find a better answer? C, inform the family that the client may experience an extinction burst at home. Again, same problem with A. We're not talking about extinction, right? We've never mentioned extinction. We're just talking about an intervention. And then D, warn the school staff that the client may begin engaging in self-injurious behavior. Again, we're adding stuff there. Why would the client suddenly start engaging in self-injurious behavior if we're targeting aggression, right? That doesn't follow with what the question was asking. The best answer here is going to be B, warn the family at home that the client's aggression may increase in the home. A post-reinforcement pause is typically observed in which of the following reinforcement schedules? So what is a post-reinforcement pause? Post-reinforcement pause is exactly what it sounds like. Response, 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 response. We deliver reinforcement, and there's a temporary pause before responding starts again. When does this typically occur? So like the scallop effect, you just kind of need to know this, right? And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? When would a post-reinforcement pause occur? Well, probably when you know when you're going to be reinforced, right? So on a fixed schedule, you can typically start to predict when reinforcement is coming, especially a fixed response or a fixed ratio, I should say. If you're on a fixed ratio 4, you're going to figure out pretty quickly that every 4 responses, you're going to get reinforcement. So you might respond, get the reinforcement, take a little pause, start responding again. That's the idea. So we're really looking at fixed schedules here for post-reinforcement pauses. So A, a fixed interval and a variable interval. Well, we have a variable schedule, so not what we're looking for. B, fixed ratio and variable ratio. Again, we're not looking for variable schedules. We're looking for fixed schedules. C, fixed ratio and fixed interval. Yes, a fixed ratio certainly would produce a post-reinforcement pause, and fixed interval is the same idea. You can start to predict what interval or how much time is going to pass before you need to respond for a reinforcement, right? If my fixed interval is 2 minutes, I'm going to learn pretty quickly that I need to wait at least 2 minutes to get reinforcement. So I might not even do anything for the first minute and a half, right? So fixed schedules really are the ones that typically produce post-reinforcement pauses. And then D is, again, a variable schedule, not what we're looking for. You, a BCBA, have successfully taught your client how to deposit a check at home using a fake bank that you created. If you want to make sure that the client can deposit a check at the bank, which of the following is the best strategy to use? All right, let's be careful. On the exam, we're looking for the best answer. Okay. Many times, multiple answers look pretty good. And in this case, if you want to teach generalization, there's many strategies we can use, right? But the question wants the best. What is going to be the best way, okay, ideally, right, perfect world, to teach a client to generalize this skill of depositing checks? A, make sure and program for depositing a check in different settings and implement the program until the client can deposit a check in different settings independently. Okay, pretty good, right? We're programming for generalization, and we are going to continue implementing our programs until that client goes into a different setting and deposits a check independently. A is pretty good. Remember, though, we're looking for the best. Is there even a stronger way to train for generalization? Well, if we look at B, train your client to deposit a check in different settings until the client can deposit the check in different settings independently. Now we are actively going into different settings and training them in different settings, just like we were in this home setting. A, we're just programming for generalization, right? We're using strategies. B, we're actually going into this bank and teaching them how to deposit a check, okay? If you have the time and resources, B is always going to be better than just programming for it. B, you're actually training in the environment you want them to be able to produce the behavior. B is just stronger than A. C, bring your client to a bank every Tuesday. If they deposit a check independently, reinforce them. This is that hope approach, right? We're teaching them at home. We're going to bring them every Tuesday to a bank and see if they can do it. If they can, we'll reinforce. If not, well, we'll just try again next week. C is going to be worse than A or B. You're not even programming in C. You're just hoping it happens. D, program for response generalization to ensure that your client is depositing checks in different settings. Do we want our client to engage in response generalization? Now, think about what response generalization is, right? We've got a single stimulus, and then multiple responses are occurring in the presence of that one stimulus. What we really want is them to be able to deposit a check in front of multiple stimuli, right? So we're not really programming for response generalization. We want to generalize across stimuli. So the best answer here is going to be B, train your client to deposit a check in different settings until the client can deposit the check in different settings independently. Actively going in, okay, and working on this skill in the setting you want to see that skill occur. Which of the following is an example of automatic negative punishment? Whenever you get a question with very specific terminology, before you start attacking it, always ask yourself, what is the definition? So what is the definition of automatic negative punishment? Punishment, we're looking for something decreasing. Negative, we're looking for something to be taken away. Automatic, we're looking for a non-social type of negative punishment. So that's what we're looking for in our answer choice. A, Justin and Joanne are fighting over the iPad. Their dad takes the iPad away for the rest of the day or until the fighting stops. All right, so we did remove something. He's attempting to punish them. but it's social. So we can't pick this one because we're looking for automatic, not socially mediated. B, whenever Greg starts acting strange at school, other kids start to make fun of him. Why can't we pick this one? Well, first, it's positive because we're adding the making fun of him, right? Plus, it's socially mediated, so it's wrong on 2 accounts. C, you started walking faster as you were eating an ice cream cone, and your ice cream cone fell to the ground. All right, so what happened? This is automatic, right? You were walking by yourself eating ice cream. Okay, as you were walking faster, your ice cream was removed, it fell to the ground. In the future, you're going to not walk as fast when you're eating an ice cream cone. Okay, removal, decrease, automatic. C looks like our best answer so far. And then D, you ride with the windows down in your car, but due to high winds, you rolled the windows up yesterday. If you roll the windows up, okay, to remove high winds, in the future, you're going to continue rolling the windows up, right? So this is automatic, but this is going to be reinforcement. The best example of automatic negative punishment is C. You started walking faster as you were eating an ice cream cone, and your ice cream cone fell to the ground. Now, yes, in order to determine if something is punishing or reinforcing, we need to know what happens to future behaviors. But in none of these options do we know what happens to future behaviors, okay? So we need to still just pick the best answer that's going to be closest to automatic negative punishment. After 6 months of providing parent training, you are seeing no progress with a 6-year-old client. During multiple observations, you observed that the client's parent are not implementing any of the procedures you taught them and are not utilizing the extinction procedure when the client engages in whining. Are you able to discontinue services in this scenario? This is straight from the new ethics code. When we evaluate if we're able to discontinue services, there are several things we can take into account. This question is asking about parents who aren't complying and aren't following through with what you are telling them to do. As a result, you're seeing no progress with this client. Are you able to discontinue services? A, yes, you can discontinue services at any time for any reason. Well, we know that's not true. We can't abandon clients. We can't just quit services, right? We need to at least try and transition them. We need a reason. We don't just stop services for no reason. So A is obviously wrong. B, no, you cannot withhold services from a client due to the actions of a stakeholder. This is actually incorrect. New ethical code, it says one of the reasons you can use for discontinuing services is if stakeholders are non-compliant. So we're now holding the stakeholders responsible, okay, for their actions as well. You can absolutely withhold and discontinue services due to the actions of stakeholders. C, yes, if the stakeholders are not following through with interventions, you can discontinue services. C is correct, okay? If the stakeholders, after 6 months, are refusing to do what you ask them to do, they're not on board, they're not complying with interventions, they're not following through, you have every right in the world to start to transition that client out because you are starting to tread water, right? Waste your time when we could be helping somebody else. We're holding the stakeholder accountable for our services as well. The new ethical code says this is acceptable. Now, remember, if you're going to do this, we don't just abandon the client, right? We're going to take the necessary steps. But if they're not following through, you can absolutely discontinue services. And then D, no, you need to provide at least a year of training before you can discontinue services due to stakeholder behavior. That is just incorrect. Nothing says you need to provide a year of training before you can discontinue services. C is going to be our best answer. Whenever an analyst terminates supervision of a supervisee, it is the analyst's responsibility to do what? So you're a behavior analyst, you are supervising someone, and you are going to terminate supervision for whatever reason. No reasons given here, but we know we're terminating supervision. What is it your responsibility to do in that situation? A, help the supervisee find another supervisor. That is not your responsibility, okay? The supervisee is responsible for finding their own supervisor. Now, you want to do your best, right, to not abandon them, but it is not on you to help them find another supervisor. A is wrong. B, minimize any negative impact to the supervisee. Yes, this is straight from the ethical code. Just because we're terminating supervision doesn't mean we want to impact a lot of harm or a negative impact to the supervisee losing supervision. It's your goal or your responsibility as an analyst to minimize negative impact to the supervisee who you just terminated supervision with. What about C, discontinue all contact with the supervisee? No, not at all, right? There's a million reasons you might discontinue supervision. C is too strong. D, the supervisee is responsible for themselves. While that may be, they're asking about the analyst responsibility. And when we're talking about the analyst responsibility, we're talking about B, minimize any negative impact to the supervisee. You're working with the client who responds with high latency. If you were to target this behavior, which of the following definitions would be most appropriate? Okay, client, high latency, we want them to what? We want them to respond quicker, right? High latency means from the time the SD to the response, it's too long. So we want to reduce that. We want them to respond quicker. So we're going to pick a target behavior and define it. Let's find the best definition. A, non-responding, the client does not respond to an SD within 10 seconds. Non-responding, can a dead person not respond? Yes. Remember our dead man's test. If a dead person can do it, we need to pick a better target, okay? A dead person is non-responsive. It's a very inactive behavior, okay, to target, right? Same with B, non-responding. The client does not respond to an SD. Both are very inactive. Dead man's test failed, both A and B. So we have C and D. They're very similar, right? Responding, the client responds within a timely manner to an SD versus responding, the client responds within 10 seconds to an SD. What's going to be better? Obviously, the more specific one, right? Definitions, clear, concise, complete, specific, objective as possible. D is going to be the better definition. If you were to describe to a parent a set of behaviors relevant to a particular setting, you would be describing what? Okay, so we're describing first off, a set of behaviors, right? And it's going to be a set of behaviors that occur in a particular setting. Now, keep in mind, this definition is ripped straight from our Cooper book, okay? So a set of behaviors relevant to a particular setting. Would that be respondent behavior? Well, no, we know respondent behavior is not what we're looking at in ABA, right? We deal with operant behavior, so A is wrong. B, response generalization. Are we talking about generalization here? No, we're talking about a group or a set of behaviors relevant to one setting. C, repertoire is going to be our answer. When we talk about a repertoire, we talk about a set of behaviors. We can also have you can have a set of maladaptive behaviors. You can have a set of good behaviors. You can have a set of stimulatory behaviors. Doesn't really matter. If you're just talking about a set of behaviors, though, you're talking about a C, repertoire. And the final product of shaping is considered what? I included this because when I use this term, sometimes people don't know what I'm talking about, and that's an issue because this is the technical correct term for what we're trying to achieve with shaping. So A, successive approximations. Obviously, we're reinforcing successive approximations, but through the reinforcement of successive approximations, what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve B, a terminal behavior. The terminal behavior is going to be the final product. It is the behavior we want to see when shaping begins. Then generalization and permanent product, okay? That's not what we're trying to achieve with shaping. Shaping, we're trying to take a behavior and shape it to the terminal behavior that we want to see in the end. So the final product of shaping is